All right, Professor Avi Loeb from Harvard University recently just appeared on News Nation to respond to a comment made from Tim Burchett that an admiral had told him about a UFO the size of a football field moving underwater. Play the clip.
We're bringing in Harvard professor Avi Loeb on this, who found fragments of what he says could be an extraterrestrial object on the floor of the Pacific. It's always good to see you. Thanks for making the time.
Thanks for having me, Natasha.
Let's start here with what Burchett is describing. What do you make of this account from an admiral through Burchett of a football field-sized UAP moving at incredible speeds underwater?
Well, there are definitely anomalous objects that the military recognizes. The question is whether it's malfunction of the sensors or human-made objects or something else. And to figure it out, we really need access to the data. And, obviously the government is mostly interested in adversarial nations, any risk to national security. But if they cannot figure something out and it's not clear whether it's human-made, I suggest that scientists like myself will help them in figuring it out.
All right, stay with me. I've got another clip. You remember at the beginning of that clip I just played that the newscaster, right? She says, Dr. Avi Loeb, who may have found fragments, right, of an extraterrestrial object under the ocean, right? Well, that's something that Avi Loeb's been talking about for a minute, and I've got another clip from this News Nation segment to help explain a little bit more about that.
I want to play a quick clip from our very own Ross Coulthard and get your reaction on the other side. Let's take a listen.
Look, I've heard this story before. I've heard multiple accounts of objects moving at ridiculous speeds underwater. I've actually spoken to submariners in both the American military and also the Australian military who've told me that they've recorded objects moving at over 1,000 kilometres an hour underwater. That's faster than the speed of sound.
So faster than the speed of sound. Professor, what does your scientific mind make of this? Is it possible?
Well, I want to see the data because that will allow us to figure out what is going on. There was a meteor, a half a meter in size, that collided with Earth about a decade ago, and we went to the Pacific Ocean and recovered tiny molten droplets from the site of the crash. And we would like to go again and figure out if there are bigger pieces out of the wreckage of this meteor. It came from outside the solar system, and it had an unusual material strength and unusual speed. And we hope to do that in August 2025. We have a ship in mind. We just need $6.5 million. I'm waiting to hear from potential donors.
All right, so an object moving 1,000 kilometers, over 1,000 kilometers an hour underwater. Yeah, okay. Tell me more, right? Where's the evidence, I guess, of that first? But regardless, as Avi Loeb says, we need more data, right? Now, I will say this. What made Avi Loeb think that what he had found was extraterrestrial, right? What about it was something that he said, not from Earth, right? And also, or at least a possibility, right? And it sounds like he's making another trip right here in 2025, in August 2025, to do more work. How can anyone not support that, right? Let's go. Let's get on it.
What makes you think these molten spherules would be extraterrestrial in nature? What raised your eyebrows about them?
So in fact, we published two very detailed papers about the materials we found, and the chemical composition and also the structure of those droplets indicated that they came from beyond Earth for sure, because some elements are missing, and those elements usually evaporate. These are volatile elements that evaporate during a fireball, an explosion that occurs when an object burns up as a result of its friction with air. And moreover, we found a high abundance of elements like beryllium, lanthanum, uranium, that you don't find in the primitive materials that made the solar system. In fact, such an abundance was never found on Earth, the Moon, Mars. And so we have a conjecture that maybe it came from outside the solar system, but we want to visit the site again and figure out the nature of the object. Was it a rock or some technological gadget?
All right, now before he ever made that very first trip out to Papua New Guinea in August 2023, I believe, that's when it happened, I actually had an interview with Avi Loeb. Right? It's one of the very first videos vetted ever published. So I'm going to play you a preview of that interview, and I'll put a link in the description so you can check it out. But before we get to that, I have one last clip of Avi Loeb on News Nation being directly asked, is this extraterrestrial what he found?
Are you saying that perhaps it wasn't a meteorite, but it could have been an alien craft?
We just don't know. I should say also this month, the Minor Planet Center at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics at first cataloged an object in the sky as if it's a new asteroid reported by an amateur astronomer. But then they realized that, in fact, it was the Tesla Roadster car that was launched as a dummy payload in 2018 by Elon Musk on the Falcon Heavy. And so what I would say is perhaps Elon Musk is not the most accomplished space entrepreneur since the Big Bang, 13.8 billion years ago. And we should look around and see if we have evidence for a neighbor, because if there is a civilization that predated us, it's quite possible we can learn about new science and technology from them.
Well said, Professor. All right, so let's get to this preview of an interview I did with Avi Loeb back in April 2023. And it's one of the very first videos I ever published on the channel. I think the second one, if I'm not mistaken. So this is old school vetted, old logo, everything. I'll put a link in the description. Go check it out. It's an awesome interview with Avi. And this is basically just kind of like the opening trailer to kind of fill you in on who Avi Loeb is, and one little clip from our interview. There's a lot in it. I highly recommend checking it out. And it's right before David Grush came out, essentially, right? And it's before he made his first trip to Papua New Guinea in 2023. I believe that was also in August. So this new trip is in August 2025, right? He's going back. So this is before he ever did that, but after Oumuamua. So anyway, take a look. You know, it's fascinating to hear that the reason we potentially haven't found that there's life in other planets is Adolf Hitler. If you don't know who Avi Loeb is by now, let me fill you in.
All the way from Harvard University. Please join me in welcoming to the stage our guest tonight, Dr. Avi Loeb.
A team of researchers, including Harvard astronomer Avi Loeb,
renowned astrophysicist Avi Loeb,
Professor Loeb is a Frank B. Baird Jr. Professor of Science at Harvard University. He has authored 8 books and over 800 scientific papers.
may have just found a trace of an interstellar object in the ocean.
Loeb's audacious theory sends shockwaves through the scientific community.
Professor Loeb, he is a Harvard professor and head of the Galileo Project, has just come back from a trip that he says has advanced our understanding.
He posits that this interstellar interloper may, in fact, be a clandestine emissary from a distant civilization.
You know, if we believe that we are alone and special and unique, that shows arrogance.
Avi Loeb became well known when he first identified Oumuamua, an interstellar meteor, as being not a meteor. He first posited that it could potentially be an extraterrestrial object, our first extraterrestrial object that we've identified. The reason he gave? Its trajectory. Apparently, it had taken a different course than what was expected of a standard comet. There was the predicted expected trajectory, and then the actual trajectory of Oumuamua. And that difference is what made Avi think something could be up. All right, link in the description. Go check out that interview with Avi Loeb. As always, thank you so much for joining me. We'll see you on the next one. Remember, every day's a gift, y'all. Peace!
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep.